Family is where our story begins, and stories tell us where family has been. Legends, myths, and heroes inspire us in our own struggles to know that the sacrifices made for love of family are what matter.
July the 17th, 1910, train number 111 left Louisville, Kentucky. And he called the North Flagman, something like this. Flagman gave him the highball signal, and he asked him back with two short blasts. Train leaving the yard.
Growing up in the 1950s and 60s in suburban Chicago, I have fond memories of my grandmother, Ada Reed Hemler. Many summers we would board the Texas Chief at the LaSalle Street Station in Chicago and journey by train to spend 2 weeks visiting with her in her hometown, which had been named after her, Ada, Oklahoma. In 1890, her father, Jeff Reed, and uncles Jim and John Daggs moved their families from Red River County, Texas, to newly opened Indian Territory following the 1889 land rush, where the United States government opened 2 million acres of land in central Oklahoma to white settlers.
On his first trip, Jeff helped the Daggs brothers drive their cattle to their new home in Oklahoma. When he saw the golden sea of waist-high grass in blackjack groves, he was so impressed that he immediately returned home, sold his holdings, and moved us from Red River County, Texas, back to this newly opened Indian Territory. Joanna K. Reed, wife of Jeff Reed.
Jeff went on to become the area's first postmaster and Indian agent, named the city Ada after his eldest daughter, my grandmother, Ada Reed Hemler, and run many stores and businesses. One summer around 1965, my grandmother visited our home in the Chicago area. During that visit, my sister Maureen and I interviewed her about the early days, when at age 4 she traveled by covered ox-drawn wagon into Indian Territory.
It was spring and the river was high. We had all of our worldly possessions packed into a covered wagon as we floated across the Red River from Texas into Indian Territory. Mama rode side saddle, helping Papa drive cattle. My 2-year-old brother Ernest sat next to me, and I held tight to my sister Annie, who was but 2 months old. Every time I saw a bush move, I was afraid an Indian would jump out at us. Papa brought along a tent which he would pitch after riding all day. Mama would cook dinner in a Dutch oven over a wood pile fire. Sometimes we would camp for 1 or 2 days so that the cattle could rest and feed. It took us 3 weeks to travel from Anona, Texas, to our new home in Oklahoma. Ada Reed Hemler, daughter of Jeff Reed.
Grandmother went on to tell many stories of her family and its history. The story that mystified me the most was the story of our ancestors who owned land in Dallas, Texas.
One of our ancestors owned a lot of land. When his first wife, who we descended from, died, he married a younger woman. His new wife had him rewrite his will so that she would inherit everything. He died a few years later, and she sold the land off in parcels. That land is now the city of Dallas. Ada Reed Hemler.
Was this true? Did our family own land that is now the city of Dallas? Who was this, and how could I trace this? Let me review the facts as my grandmother has stated them. 1. Her ancestor was widowed and had a second marriage. We descended from the first marriage. 2. The second wife had her husband change the will so that she would inherit everything. 3. Her ancestor owned land that was inherited by the second wife when he died and sold off in parcels. This land today is the city of Dallas. Since grandmother did not say which ancestor by name, I had to first go back into her family tree and see who had a second marriage, with us descending from the first marriage and owned land in Dallas, Texas. First, I looked at her maternal line. Ada Reed's mother was Joanna Keturah Floyd. She was born near Clarksville, Red River County, Texas, on January 3, 1867. Joanna's father was a farmer, Josiah Wesley Floyd, born in Rutherford County, Tennessee, in 1818, who had a first wife, Nancy Doak, born in 1819. They married July 3, 1843, and had 9 children. In 1847, they moved to Red River County, Texas, where Nancy died in May 1865, 40 days after the birth of their 9th and last child. Josiah then married his second wife on September 8, 1865, a widow and Choctaw Indian born in Mississippi. Eliza Ann Duncan Thornhill was 32 years old at the time and had one daughter, Winnie, by her first marriage. They had 5 children together, of which Joanna, my great-grandmother, was the oldest. Josiah died January 2, 1882, in Red River County. This could not be the family that my grandmother Ada spoke of, as we descended from the second wife, and they did not own land in Dallas, Texas. Second, I looked at her paternal line. Ada Reed's father was William Jefferson Reed, known as Jeff, and was born February 15, 1861, in Alto, Louisiana. Jeff's father was James S. Reed, born on August 19, 1827, in Franklin County, Mississippi. His mother, Era Ann Turner, married James on July 19, 1855. James was a blacksmith and cotton farmer and was injured in the Civil War as a Confederate soldier at the Battle of Vicksburg. He was honorably discharged about July 4, 1863, and said to walk with a limp the rest of his life from that war injury. In 1866, when Jeff was 5 years old, his mother Ann died. James moved with his 8 children to Chickett County, Arkansas. It was here that James met 19-year-old Amanda Lucinda Stevenson and was married the same year. James and Amanda moved to Dallas, Texas in 1868 and are found in the 1870 census, living in Dallas County, Texas. During that time, from 1868 to 1877, they had 7 children. It appears that this may have been the family that my grandmother spoke about. There were 2 wives with children. We descended from the first wife. The family shows up on the 1870 census in Dallas, Texas, with Jeff, age 9. At first glance, it seemed that this blended family traveled far and often. But as I studied the area maps, I could see that they made homes on either side of the Mississippi River in 3 state locations that were not that far apart, It was common during this period for families to have a home and farmland on opposite sides of the Mississippi River and in two states. In addition, the Mississippi River's constant shifting could cause a small part of its state to appear nestled in another state. Looking back at James' pioneer ancestors, they moved west as territories opened up for settlement. James and his maternal grandparents and great-grandparents had witnessed colonial America, the American Revolution, the 1803 Louisiana Purchase, War of 1812, the Indian Removal Act, the Mexican-American War, and finally for James, the American Civil War, or War of Northern Aggression as they called it. All of these events offered opportunities for acquiring land westward as well as challenges. Earliest records indicate that the family moved from North Carolina to Mississippi and then to Louisiana. James' father was Willis Henry Reed, born 1801 and died 1847, in Franklin County, Mississippi. He was a cotton farmer like his eldest son James. Records show land and residences in Amite and Franklin County, Mississippi, and also Caldwell Parish, Louisiana. After the death of James' father in 1847, the 1860 federal census shows James' mother, Mary Lassiter, and his youngest siblings, Clista and Addison, living in his household, with his wife, Era Ann Turner, and their children in Franklin Parish, Louisiana, near the Redmouth Post Office. At the age of 25, a union in 1852, producing Marina, a daughter born 1853, indicates that there was a previous marriage, which ended with this unknown wife's death in 1854. This marriage and a marriage to second wife Era Ann Turner in 1855, as well as land deeds in 1858 and the 1860 census, indicate that James Reed was living in and owned farmland in Franklin Parish, Louisiana, until his wife Ann and his mother both died in 1865. In 1866, James, who is now 39 years old, moves his family of 8 children to Chicot County, Arkansas, where he meets his third wife, Amanda Lucinda Stevenson. It is in 1868 that he moves again to Dallas County, Texas. Tax records, land deeds, and the 1870 census place them there until 1873. At the time of their move to Dallas, Texas, there was much promotion of rich farmlands to be had in that area, and certainly opportunities for a blacksmith as well.
While serving as a supply center for the Confederate Army west of the Mississippi River, Dallas's location shielded the town from the destruction during the Civil War. Since Texas and Dallas were so far from the theater of war, they gave money, flour, and other various supplies to the Southern cause, and a munitions factory was built. When the Union Army began to approach Mississippi and Louisiana, their cotton was transported and stored here. The wartime demand for wheat, saddlery, and leather goods enabled residents to rebuild quickly after an 1860 fire destroyed most of the business district. Many Southerners came to the Dallas area to rebuild their fortunes after the war. They could no longer maintain plantations, but the farmlands of North Dallas meant opportunity. Dallas continued to grow during the Reconstruction years. Unlike other Southern towns that had to be rebuilt first, the majority of new settlers came from Mississippi, Tennessee, and Arkansas, but were joined by migrants from Louisiana, East Texas, and other southern states where life had been disrupted by the Civil War. Many remained small-scale farmers or practiced trades in town, planting cotton instead of wheat. The Making of a Modern City, Patricia Everidge Hill.
Family records reflect that James found his land rocky and not viable for farming. History shows us that with the railroad came an influx of immigrants and farmers from other states. As the population grew in Dallas, land values rose as well as crime rates. This was the time of infamous outlaws like Doc Holliday and Belle Starr, Frank James and Sam Bass.
On July 16, 1872, the first passenger train, the Houston and Texas Central, steamed into Dallas. In 1873, the Texas and Pacific came. With the arrival of the trains, the population soared from 3,000 in early 1872 to more than 7,000 in September of the same year. Dallas was now a concentration point for raw materials such as grain and cotton shipped to the south and east. Dallas had also become a center of the buffalo market. It was the last chance for people traveling further west to get supplies. Outlaws were common during this period. Belle Starr began her adventures in Dallas as a dance hall singer and dancer, and later sold stolen horses and harbored outlaws from her livery stable. Doc Holliday came to Dallas to restore his health. He opened a dentist's office, but soon turned to gambling. In 1875, he killed a man and left Dallas. Sam Bass robbed 4 trains in 2 months during the spring of 1878. 3 months later, Bass was killed at an ambush near Round Rock.
In 1873, James decided to take advantage of the increase in the value of his land, sell 100 acres, and move out to Red River County for better soil and less density in population. Tax and land records show that he bought 1,880 acres near Clarksville in Red River County, Texas. 4 years later, in 1877, his last child, Maddie, was born in Bayou Macon, Chicot County, Arkansas, where he dies in 1879. The 1880 census lists Amanda as a farmer with her 6 minor children residing there. She dies in 1886 and is buried alongside James S. Reed at Mount Carmel Cemetery in Eudora, Chicot County, Arkansas. As 100 acres does not a city make, the question remains, was there more land that was sold off later by his widow when James died in 1879? Searching Rome, Dallas property records, checking similar surnames and family given names, quite a bit of land showed up as a possibility. Over 9,000 acres were sold in the 1870s, and over 3,700 acres of it by an Amanda Reed E. 2 100-acre parcels were purchased by James S. Reed on November 11, 1869, from F. M. Brizendine and wife, and Martha Brizendine, from the Marianne Freeman Survey, which is the name of the original land grant. The original area of Dallas was 1,440 acres. In 1890, Dallas annexed the city of East Dallas, which had a larger geographical area than that of Dallas. In 1903, Oak Cliff, a city on the other side of the Trinity River, was annexed. As you can see, records show that there were many Reed families in Dallas County, Texas, during the pre- and post-Civil War period. At this point, I have no evidence of any relationship between James S. Reed and Joseph C. Reed, who was one of the largest landowners during that time. That being said, James S. Reed did work as a blacksmith and farmed 200 acres of land that is now part of Dallas from 1869 to 1873. When he died in 1879, he left a widow with 14 living children. 6 of those children were listed in the 1880 census as ages 2 to 12 and living on a farm in Bayou Macon, Chicka County, Arkansas with Amanda. My great-grandfather, Jeff Reed, was 18 years old and was found in the 1880 census working as a farm laborer in Louisiana. A year later, he moved near his boyhood home of Red River County, Texas, where our story began. Certainly he would have remembered the many places he grew up on and farmed alongside his father in Louisiana, Arkansas, Dallas, Red River County, Texas, and Chicka County, Arkansas, following the Civil War. Like my grandmother, Ada Reed Hemler, he had many journeys and stories to pass down through her. While the James S. Reed family did not own the entirety of what is now the city of Dallas, they made their mark and contributed in that area at a formative and expansive time, which set the tone for what is now a thriving and major city. This started out as a simple project to prove a family legend. It turned out to be an amazing journey of discovery. At the exciting times of our westward expansions, the Reed family, like many families, made sacrifices and worked hard in order to provide for their families. There was persistence and tenacity, even if it meant uprooting the family and moving to a different area that might provide a better living. At the time that James S. Reed died, he left farm property that enabled his widow to provide for their 6 minor children. My great-grandfather, Jeff Reed, was given skills and experience which enabled him to move further west and be a driving force in the building of Ada, Oklahoma. Perhaps the most important legacy that parents leave their children is not land and property, but the skills and values that help them to shape their future and that of their families.
Her up in New Orleans, they headed west to find a dream. They truly want to be a star. They picked one day and there they are. And oh,